Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Shiv Ramanuj was saying that when we're going out to give up these books, it's historic because Srila Vyasdev wrote so many books knowing that they were going to be distributed. He knew that most people would be able to speak Sanskrit, but he knew it would be translated into so many languages and it would be distributed en masse. But that's interesting. So we're reading this right now. You know that the author who was writing this down knew that it would be getting read out in less than Hegel 5,000 years later in a converted barn. And Alan would be here. And so we Maria. We're reading, is the text 85?
No.
37. 137 probably.
Page 7. So it's Canto 8, it's chapter 5 entitled The Demigods Appeal to the Lord. And we are on text 37. So I'll run through the Sanskrit. Prana Abhudyasha Chara Chara Charana Anasahovala Ojaschavanyu and Vasma Samraja Ivanukavaya Prasidatam Naha Samahabhibhuti Pranat Abhudyasya Chara Charana Anasaho Balam Ojaschavanyu and Vasma Samrajam Ivanugavaya Prasidatam Naha Samahabhibhuti. Follow.
Pranata Bhujyasya Chara Charanam Pranaha Saho Balamajascha Vayu and Vasma Samrajam Ivanugavayam Prasidatamnaha Samahabhibhuti Pranada Buddhyasya Chara Charanam Pranasaho Balam Ujaschavaryu Vasya Samrajam Ivanugavayam and Vasna Samrajam Ivanugavayam Prasidatamnaha Samahabhibhuti Prasidatamnaha Samahabhibhuti Pranasaho Balam Ujaschavaryu and Vasna Samrajam Ivanugavayam Prasidatamnaha Samahabhibhuti Pranat
From the vital force.
From the vital force.
Abhu generated. Yasha of who?
Of whom?
Chara Acharanam of all living entities moving and non-moving.
Of all living entities moving and non-moving.
Prana, the vital force.
Vital force.
Saha, the basic principle of life.
The basic principle of life.
Balam, strength. Oja, the vital force.
The vital force.
Cha,
and
Vayu, the earth. And Vasma, follow. Samrajam,
Samrajam,
an emperor. Eva,
Eva,
like Hanuga,
Hanuga,
followers.
followers.
Vayam,
Vayam,
all of us.
all of us.
Prasidatam,
Prasidatam,
may be pleased.
may be pleased.
Naha,
Naha,
upon us.
upon us.
Saha,
Saha,
be. Mahavibhuti,
Mahavibhuti,
is supremely powerful.
supremely powerful.
All living entities, moving and non-moving, revive their vital force, their bodily strength, and their very lives from the air. All of us follow the air for our vital force, exactly as servants follow an emperor. The vital force of air is generated from the original vital force of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. May that Supreme God be pleased with us. So I'll read the next one. Shrutanta Joya Javidas Chakani Prajna Kapulasya Mapya Pranidriya Masu Sarira Kita Prasidatam Nahasamaha Bhuti. So he says the same end line for the next few verses. May the Supreme Personality of God be pleased with us. The different directions are generated from his ears, the holes of the body come from his heart, and the vital force, the senses, the mind, the air within the body, and the ether, which is the shelter of the body, come from his navel. And the next one. Balam Mahendra Skrigasha Prasadam Lam Yogi Sho Ishanam Virincha Kedyastu Chandasna Yasho Medatra Kaha Prasidatamna Samahaviduti. Mahendra, the king of heaven, was generated from the prowess of the Lord. The demigods were generated from the mercy of the Lord. Lord Shiva was generated from the anger of the Lord, and Lord Brahma from his solar intelligence. The Vedic mantras were generated from the bodily holes of the Lord, and the great saints of the Japatis were generated from his genitals. May that supremely powerful Lord be pleased with us. Next one. The goddess of fortune is generated from his chest, the inhabitants of Pitraloka from his shadow, religion from his bosom, and irreligion, the opposite of religion, from his back. The heaven plants were generated from the top of his head, and the Apsaras from his sensory joint. May that supremely powerful personality of Godhead be pleased with us. The Brahmins and Vedic knowledge come from the mouth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Kshatris and bodily strength come from his arms. The Vaishyas and their expert knowledge and productivity and wealth come from his thighs. And the Shudras, who are outside of Vedic knowledge, come from his feet. May that Supreme Personality of God, who is full in prowess, be pleased with us. Greed is generated from his lower lip, affection from his upper lip, bodily lust from his nose, animalistic lust and desires from his sense of touch, yamaraj from his eyebrows, and eternal time from his eyelashes. May that Supreme Lord be pleased with us. Okay, go up that one, wrong that one. After this one. All learned men say that the five elements, eternal time, creative activity, the three modes of material nature, and the varieties produced by these modes are all creations of Yoga Maya. This material world is therefore extremely difficult to understand, but those who are highly learned have rejected it. May the Supreme Personality of God, who is the controller of everything, be pleased with us.
Jai.
The word there, V by Ya, is very important in this verse. No one can understand how everything is happening in this material world by the arrangement of the Supreme Personality of God through his material energies. I'll just break off here. Oh my God, Shri Chaitanya Navastam Stapakami, Yabutale, Swaya Buddha, Jaya Shri Krishna, Chaitanya Kalichananda, Shri Radha, Shri Vasali, Gauravakulinda,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva Rignam bhavnebhyo vaishnavebhyo. So the reason why I thought I'd just break off there was because I'm not forgetting something. Sri Prabhupada says in the prayer book, everything in this material world is happening by the increase of the Supreme Personality of God through his material energies, but no one can understand how everything is happening. So we did a book called Nature's IQ, and what it's pointing out is examples in nature of how these things couldn't have happened by accident. And one of them is a bird with a long beak, it's about 3 feet long, 2.5 feet long, and it sticks the beak into a heap of leaves and soil. And the beak is a thermometer, and you can tell how hot it is. And it puts a few leaves on, or it takes a few leaves off, and that regulates the heat. And under the heat is eggs that have been laid, and they have to be kept just at the right temperature. Too high, they'll cook. Too low, they won't have. So they were just like pondering on how do you get the bird in the in-between stage when it's only got half the size of a beak, and it doesn't work that well. Well, if everything dies out, the whole species is finished, unless it's all there in one go, with the beak just that size. And it's so trying to understand how that happened. And even as devotees, even though we accept that Krishna is the Supreme, how do we understand that Krishna created that? How did he just, and because everything just happens instantaneously, because everything exists in the eternal presence. It's not like Krishna was there with a sketch pad and he was saying to everyone, what do you think? Maybe number 6 is wrong there? And everyone was like, oh, no, if you did that, the X will come. It's just, as soon as Krishna's there, king, everything's just there in one go. Bam. There's no working it out, getting it right and getting it wrong, and sketching it, and then well, we'll try that and see how it goes. There's this big fish as well as an orange fish. And it's got these little fish, and it's a fierce-looking thing actually. That's in Nature's IQ. Big orange fish with these really jagged teeth. Looks like a, you wouldn't want to get one of those on the end of your toe if you were swimming around. And it's like that. They're like you know. And these little blue fish are flying in and nibbling away at little bits of the fish that's ripped apart, So that's great, it's sailing on its dentist bill, and all the blue fish are getting mean, But how did the blue fish know that the orange fish would allow them to do that? How could that evolve? Just before it was evolving, the blue fish come over and the orange one goes, okay, thank you very much, anymore. And then the next day, they have a meeting, and then from there on, a memo goes out in the ocean. If you're blue, you're fine. If you're any other color, keep well away from the sky. How did that happen? How did that evolve? Everything is interdependent as well. If the bee comes before the flower, the bee starves. If the flower comes before the bee, the flower can't pollinate. They both have to evolve on the same day. Second. You can't have half a clock that still works, and then you introduce more cobbles. It either works or it doesn't work, which means you need everything there in one go. The whole creation is one big clockwork. Every cobble has to be there, interdependent. It's called symbiotic. You can't have a cow lying on a field of mud thinking, when's the grass going to evolve? I'm getting pretty hungry. Everything's got to be there on one go. Any questions or comments on that? Okay, so that was just one point. Then you go on. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 9:10, Majak Shina Prakati Suyiti Shastra, everything is actually happening under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This much we can learn. But how it is happening is extremely difficult to understand. So I just read actually, Shiva Ramash was saying that Krishna has this plan, and it's very, very hard to work out what the plan is because Krishna is unfathomably deep. So we have our plan. And we'll go down to the test scores at 3:30, and then we'll get this off now. to be in the perfect time. And then suddenly there's this terrible spell and we can't do it anymore. We can't do that. I don't know Christian spells. Maybe there's something we can't do it in family. It's hard for us to understand the plan because we occupy such a tiny fraction of time. And we're only aware of what's going on right now, which is a millisecond. Christians are aware of everything. Only one God. And you can change things as well. You know, you can decide that was such a good idea, you can change anything from the past to the future. Christians are totally in control. And funnily enough, there's a bit of concern right now. There's a sudden readers who are having around some British actors and we're checking this out. So, some people are concerned. We should have happened told me what was what they said about war. And then a couple of years later, they said, "Oh, that doesn't understand the war." We should have happened. So, the Christian changed his mind. So, if we want to change Christians' mind, we have to get out lots of books, chant lots of pure holy names, offer lots of prayers, eat lots of prashadam, and give out lots of prashadam. And then Christian can change his plan. He can decide, no, I can help this, let's just let this take place instead. Somebody can just come walking in the door tomorrow and just say, "Is this the Hare Krishna temple?" And say, "Yeah." So, and he's 70 years old, just to make £80 million on the lottery. So, I'm going to give 100,000 from the song, but I'm going to let you guys can use the rest. Like one man did win the lottery in Avon, and he was old, and he had a couple of years left to live. Well, he only lived a couple of years. He knew he was old, and he didn't know anything. So he thought, well, I'll just start spending it then. So he started buying lots of things. And he bought that much stuff and didn't have time to open them. He just kept putting boxes in the hallway. Eventually he couldn't get the door open. And then he died. So the guy in Avon was selling all the stuff that he bought. So the guy's son, who's ended up with it, all didn't know what to do with it. So, we don't know what the plan is, what Krishna's plan is. Somebody wins a lot of money, and they realize they're not going to be able to spend it all. They may just think, they may have read the Bhagavad Gita and think, wow, this is amazing. God is passing these out. We've had the partners. I'm letting you learn that to the nation. And then the other interesting thing is it's called manifestation. I think manifesting is that you think of something that you would like. And the guy yesterday was talking to me, he wrote a check up for £365,000 for a steading that he wanted. And sure enough, his house came up, it was actually called the steading, and it was £365,000. He just handed the check to you. And that's what it's looking like. So when you put it out, and the universe responds, so if you think, what would we like, if we had 20 million, what would we like? Well, we'd like a perfect temple, or just live in something like a chakra, and we would have so much pink and gold, and inside and some like polished wood, breathtaking. You go in and you just like looking into the spiritual one and look on the altar. So we've got that. We can think there's a brown sign, there was brown Taurus signs on the motorway coming past Junction 10 on the M74, it says Hare Krishna Temple. And people are like, let's check that out. And they come up and it's this purpose-built big temple. Someone's given us 20 million. We've knocked that up, it's on marble inside. We've got 50 cows. We pay people. The milk coming in is that much, it covers everything. We've got a vegetarian restaurant in Edinburgh for deliveries. Whatever it is you want, you just have to put it out. And it will happen. That Prabhupada's open. This man was talking to Prabhupada on the bench. And he says, who are you? He goes, I'm trying to go worldwide movement. There's temples everywhere, there's farms, there's millions of books. He said, it hasn't happened just yet. We're building that concept. We cannot even understand. This much we can learn. How is it happening is extremely difficult to understand. It's even difficult to understand how we exist, how I've got a hole in a bowl on top of my head that's blowing air out of it and making the sound that people understand. But we just get on with it, right? So if you actually stop and think, it's a bit evidence and conceivable. We cannot even understand how the affairs within our body are systematically taking place. The body is a small universe. And since you cannot understand how things are happening in this small universe, how can you understand the affairs of the big universe? Actually, this universe is very difficult to understand. Yet many saints have advised, as Krishna has also advised, that this material world is dukkha. In other words, there is a place of misery and temporality. You must give up this world and go back home, back to God, it depends on that. So imagine being in a prison, right? And if you're measuring the bricks, you're saying, it's amazing, and it seems to scrape it off, you can see there's a different colour of paint underneath that one. And you use the type of concrete that's invented in 1947. But when you're in the prison, you shouldn't figure it out to get out, not working out how far out the prison is. Wasting your time. There was one guy, he was called the Bad Man of Alcatraz, and he used to make cages out of matchsticks. And one day they broke out, and they said to him, come on, we're getting out of prison. You know, all the prisoners broke out, and he goes along, I'm happy here in the prison. I just want to make this build cages out of matches. So unfortunately, that's what it's like. People have got a chance to go back together, but they want to stay in the prison. So one must give up this world and go back home, back to the personality of God. And the terrorists may argue, if this material world and its affairs are impossible to understand, how can we reject it? The answer is provided by the word Prabhu da pa bada. We have to reject this material world because it is rejected by those who are lended in Vedic wisdom. Even though we cannot understand what this material world is, we should be ready to reject it in accordance with the advice of then persons, especially the advice of Krishna. Krishna says, Na upachipanam janma dukharaya ashasvata. Na nuvanti mahatmana samsiddhim paramam gita. So we have to learn this sort of as well. So we're at the Bhajana today, and it's working. After attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they retain the time's perfection. And that's from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6:15. In other words, nobody goes up into the spiritual and sees Krishna and says, oh, no test those? No big strain down there? I'm not, no one does that, right? Once you get that stuff, I never want to see them test those again. One has to return home back to God, for this is the highest perfection of love. To go back to Godhead means to reject this material world. Although we cannot understand the functions of this material world, whether it is good for us or bad for us, in accordance with the advice of the Supreme Authority, we must reject it and go back home, back to the Godhead. That's it. Says it all the way. One of those prophets that says it all. Any questions or comments or reflections?
Talking about accepting instead of word. It reminded me of like a donkey getting kicked in the head.
Yeah.
Accepting the material world, you keep going back and keep getting kicked in the head.
Yeah. Yeah, they do these tests sometimes on rats. There's a green button and a red one. When it presses the red button, a hammer comes out with a bang on the tongue. And when it presses the green button, a treat comes out. Then they test how long it takes before the rat realizes that's not a good button. That's the bad one. So what I've done with her, especially when you got the ground. And then after a while, you start thinking. Because the problem is, if you get hit that many times, you become a bit dozy. And you may not know that there is another button. You may think the only button is sense gratification, there is another button. And then you keep doing the same thing every Christmas. Every Christmas it's a total plan. You know this time's going to be better. We'll get more tinsel. I'm buying 10 more deodorant sets for Uncle Martha. We'll get the Christmas chocolate. We'll get a bigger turkey. This time's going to happen. It's the same thing every year. After Christmas every year, what's the sound every year after Christmas? Wah, wah, wah. So we start how it goes. And the reason why people are frustrated, I studied advertising propaganda voting in Belgium, and Russian psychologist. He called advertising the glamour image. And the glamour image portrays something that's going to last forever. So you never see the man with the glass of beer like that. He holds like this. He's just starting. And you're looking at him and thinking, wow, when I get that, I'm just going to be so. But of course, it ends up like that, isn't it? And he's like, well, the father ain't really seen like that. And then he's like, all the ashes like what, which is on the stuff. It's just lying there, it's just about, and he said the anticipation is more powerful than the actual experience. It's the anticipation that wants to start looking at it becoming fine forever, you know. Everything will be okay. We were on the beach and there's a coconut bounty bar and there's some what's it going on? Relatively even though some so people they do want to be happy, but you can only be happy if it's eternal. You cannot be happy if it's eternal. There is nothing in between. It either lasts forever or it's a waste of time. And they're thinking, no, it won't last forever, but I've got a really big one, a really big bounty box. I'm sure it is now. I mean, that's not too bad, is it? Okay, it's not forever, it's pretty good going in an hour on the bounty box. I'm pretty happy after that. Or a massive glass of beer. Or particularly on it. But the fact is, eventually, you'll reach the end of the last. Even if you're up there in heaven plants for hundreds of thousands of years. China Pandit said, the worst type of sadness is formed from the heavenly plants. That is like the real come down here. Because nobody wants to come here, right? Because in the middle, perhaps you've been up there, coming down such a low lake. There's no way of doing it here. Yeah, this life, because they have ones who don't grow old, anytime they know they're going to dance, they go on with things. And then they get pregnant, since the child's born, they're going to lose their body, you know? That's how the baby goes live. Here, spend most of your life trying to grow up, right? You're feeling like, once you get older, and you'll be able to stay up late, you'll be able to play and drink with friends, and smoke cigarettes, and enjoy myself. And then suddenly, you get to 21, and then 5 years later, you're downhill, and then you're going downhill. Over 10, 20 years, you're down a slippery slope into the valley of death. So you get like a few years when you peak, and then everything just goes downhill after that. And it's interesting that I keep going around and seeing the same people every year. Some of them I've been seeing for 20, 30 years now. And when they do start aging, because sometimes they can put up a good show, you know, they have like a facelift or and they get something in them, or whatever it is they do, and they keep themselves striking. But when they suddenly go over this that kind of point of no return, suddenly they also must go in past. There's a few this year, They look really old. But one of them I haven't seen for about 4 or 5 years. She's 73 now. And it was a real shock to see her. She looked like she'd taken the face off and rolled it out and then put it back on. Wow. So it gets intense, really intense. You know. And only the devotees are okay with that, but I not the body anyway. You know. We can look on the bright side, but they haven't got a bright side. They've only got the one side, and that's starting to get pretty dull. We can always say, look, always look on the bright side. We can even look on the bright side of death. But most people can't. So we're very fortunate that we have this knowledge. We should hold on to this knowledge because the knowledge can be covered over and we can't forget. Just like we can forget Krishna, we can also forget philosophy. Very easily. So every day we should study. We should read like it's the very first time we've ever read. And all the things that we're learning, if we don't keep reading, we'll even forget Krishna's God, we'll forget his 4 working principles, we'll forget the supposed to chant this mantra, the 18 names, we'll forget. Very easy. Okay, any last questions or comments? Good. Shri Adhoksaja Krihna ki jai. Jai. Shri Adhoksaja Krihna jai. Go Krishna.
Hari Bo. H.G Adhoksaja Krihna Das ki.
Jai.